that. Are we live?
Recording in progress.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Are we good online? Good online. All right. All right. Good evening, Monterey. Greetings to my council colleagues tuning in remotely, except for Councilmember Hoffa, who's joined us here in person. To my neighbors and the residents of the city of Monterey, folks listening, part of the business community, our city manager, Hans Uslar, and a big hello to all the other members of our staff. And I will give a little quick hello to my mom who's watching online. So, hi, Mom. Monterey has a lot going on. And of course we do. People continue to flock here from all over the world. Just this morning, CBS Mornings had a special titled Surprise Cities, Monterey, California. That's us. They highlighted an employee at the Monterey Bay Aquarium named Renee, an American citizen who migrated from Mexico City. His story, I think, says so much about what makes Monterey, Monterey. The opportunities, the beauty, the people. And most touching was the message that drives his passion for his work. One of his professors told him, be a grain in the sand more shiny than the others. And folks, Monterey is shining bright. That doesn't mean that we can't find ways of becoming shinier. And that's exactly what the city has been doing over the last year. Tonight, amongst other things, I'll be discussing topics that are likely familiar to many: housing, water, and public engagement. Before I begin, though, I think it's important to set the table regarding the environment that existed at the beginning of this council term. We were right in the middle of the winter storms last year, which left over a dozen properties damaged and a huge portion of city residents and businesses without power. And frankly, we just dealt with a similar situation again this year. In addition, we ended the emergency ordinance from the COVID-19 pandemic in March of last year. Speaking of the pandemic, we saw a lot of residents at risk of eviction. Fortunately, we had federal funding that allowed for an emergency rental assistance program. That proved to be an effective tool for creating protections for some of our most vulnerable neighbors. The challenge with that funding was it restricted access, who was eligible, and it did not provide ongoing funding. So in our 2023-2024 budget, we allocated $250,000 to establish a long-term emergency assistance program. While on this topic of renters, it's important to speak to the council's decision to stand up our rental registry program. I firmly acknowledge the concern expressed by some residents, landlords, property management companies, and realtors. The main concern that I heard from these folks was the fear of Monterey implementing rent control. As stated publicly before by myself and my colleagues, the registry is not in place to automatically implement rent control. As stated, the purpose of the registry is creating a baseline for the city and community to understand the data. As stated by a renter who spoke at our first council meeting on the topic, her issue wasn't high rent, but the mold growing in her house that's getting her family members sick, and how reporting that to her landlord resulted in no action. I have heard from other concerned renters with high costs of rent, but let's not speculate. Let's look at the data and see what it says. In addition to the registry, my hope is that we spend time this year engaging with various stakeholders, but particularly renters, and obtain anecdotal stories. These stories, married with the data we collect from the registry, will permit future councils to be armed with solid information to drive future policymaking. At the end of the day, we can no longer continue to ignore the 66% of the majority of our residents. A final thought, an argument could be made that the reason that the number is 66% is because of the military community and students. Fine, let's take away a third of that number. We're still left with 44% of our community who are through and through locals, our neighbors, people that we have a moral obligation to care for, which is why it's important for us to do our part in building housing, particularly affordable housing in our city. Every 8 years, the state requires each jurisdiction to approve a housing element, which among other things is a document that spells out how many units we need to plan for the development of, what are the barriers for the development, and what we're going to do to remove those barriers. We just concluded the 5th cycle with a housing goal of 650 units. The 6th cycle requires the city of Monterey to plan for the development of 3,654 units. That's a lot of housing, but I would argue not unreasonable or unachievable. I understand a huge concern that folks have is the idea of losing our small town feel, the quaintness of Monterey. I'd argue that we'll lose that if we don't figure out how to make this work. During both of my campaigns for council and then mayor, I would have conversations with residents and I would express to them the only way your kids or your grandkids will be able to afford living here after they graduate is, one, if they're wealthy enough to afford living here after they graduate. If you're wealthy enough to help them find a place on their own, or two, you're okay with them living with you into adulthood. Someone would respond back, there's a third option. I die and they inherit my property. But it was this acknowledgement that there are limited circumstances that exist that allow offspring to continue living in a community that we're investing so much into. So the city has been hard at work engaging with the community about where do we put these units. We're getting close to the end of the process and we're feeling hopeful that the state will approve our housing element this spring. That being said, we're already at work to get some construction underway. Right behind City Hall, we're looking at nearly 40 unit development that will provide 100% affordable housing. Across town on Garden Road, developers have already broke ground and are developing multifamily residential housing units, providing upwards of 180 units. These projects collectively will add 200 units in Monterey. Yes, that is a small drop in the bucket compared to the 3,654 number, but the success of these projects will help send a message to developers that we're here and open for business. I know what many of you are thinking. What about the water? Well, city staff have been working hard and collaborating with other local agencies in obtaining some additional water supply. Let me back up and say, though, our current issue is twofold. First, the State Water Resources Control Board has imposed a cease and desist order on CalAm, our water purveyor, for overdrawing water from the Carmel River. Second, the California Public Utilities Commission imposed a condition that doesn't allow us to add any new water meters. So even if we had water, which we do have some, we're restricted in developing any new housing. It's frustrating because we have two agencies, the State Water Board, that is addressing the water supply issue, and the Housing and Community Development Department regarding our housing element, telling us two opposing things. One saying no more water and the other saying build a lot more housing. Regardless of what we're able to achieve over the next 2 years or so, Monterey One Water will soon be concluding the construction of expansion of Pure Water Monterey, which will provide an additional 2,250 acre feet of water, a year of water supply. That project is estimated to be completed in August of next year. Later this year, our local water district, the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District, will be working with local jurisdictions to determine water allocation. We will get additional water here soon, and I'm working with our state senator, John Laird, on hosting a water workshop with the State Water Board to, amongst other things, look at the possibility of lifting the CDO now that we are no longer overdrawing from the Carmel River. The expansion project will provide more long-term water supply, which is what the State Water Board needs in order to lift the CDO. So stay tuned on this one, but we're feeling optimistic. I'd also like to take some time and share with you efforts to expand public engagement. Whether you are a longtime participant in city government or maybe just tuning in for the first time, the City of Monterey is here for each and every one of you. And although we have some pretty innovative things that allows for community members to be engaged, like the Neighborhood and Community Improvement Program and our neighborhood associations, there's still a lot more work to be done. Particularly, we need to ensure we find unique and new ways of reaching underrepresented communities. Let's go back to a topic I spoke to earlier on tonight, renters. Since I've been on the council, I've noticed a disproportionate number of homeowners speaking at council meetings. This isn't to say we don't hear from homeowners or we shouldn't hear from homeowners. I'm a homeowner, but this is a problem with the voice of the majority of our population is unheard. So you may have noticed staff pushing out a lot more surveys, one specifically on community engagement. We've also been sending more postcards out to residents to inform them of policy initiatives the council is taking. This alone is not enough, though. We need to think long and hard about how we invest energy and resources in going to where the community is. This might require going door to door in some cases. I guarantee, though, that an increased investment in the process will help us fulfill one of the underlying principles of city government, democracy. My colleagues and I can think whatever we want, but I guarantee you that if a room full of residents fill the chambers expressing their desire for us to take things in a certain direction, it will create change. We, as the elected officials, are accountable to you, and I actually like it better that way. We need to get out in the community and start having more dialogue so we don't only listen, but can also help inform the community on the challenges and opportunities we face. There are so many things that I didn't get to tonight. We've been moving forward on permitting retail cannabis. We've dealt with issues relating to our fire contract with the Monterey Airport. We had our first pride flag raising ceremony. We opened up a new homeless shelter in Monterey. We hosted the homecoming of the Western Flyer. We had our ribbon cutting for the waterfront parking lot, and the Monterey Conference Center won the best conference center in the world. The list goes on and on. The important thing above all the policy initiatives and cool projects we can do is that we create a space to be here for one another. I think back to Renee from Monterey Bay Aquarium, who came to the US and found employment doing something he loves. I see Monterey as a place of rich history and amazing opportunity. And the only way we'll continue to be this grain of sand shining above the rest is by working together. Thank you. And with that, I will call up our city manager, Hans Uslar, who will give you an update on the operations of the city.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you, Mayor Williamson. I want to point out that one of the main characters on the CBS morning show this morning is sitting in the audience, our library director, Brian Edwards, who was surprised also to go to the library and show the California History Room. And he took the opportunity to take the TV journalist to Colton Hall and show him what happened here in 1849. So anyways, thank you so much for doing that. Okay, a few days ago, actually, I read the following headline, Wall Street Journal: AI is starting to threaten white-collar jobs. Few industries are immune. White collar. So I can adjust. So I had ChatGPT write my State of the City address. And here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed residents, business owners, and distinguished guests, welcome to the annual State of the City address for the beautiful city of Monterey. As your city manager, it's both an honor and a privilege to stand before you today to reflect on the progress we've made, acknowledge the challenges we faced, and outline the promising future that lies ahead for our beloved community. I will read one more sentence from ChatGPT. As we gather here today to reflect on the state of the city, let us celebrate our collective achievements, acknowledge the challenges that lie ahead, and reaffirm our shared commitment to building a brighter future for Monterey. Sounds like a good marketing piece also for C Monterey. I see the CEO here. So that was my AI generated State of the City address. And I hope that you don't feel that was the best part of my tonight's speaking. So thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you, Mayor Williamson and the City Council, for all what you do for our city. It's a great time to be city manager for the city of Monterey. I always use that sentence because it comes with a handbook of being city manager. Together with our residents, business, and visitors, we have created and maintained a very high quality of life in our city. My part of the city address is to share with you insights from our perspective as staff. While we help the council develop policies, our job is more to implement the council actions, as well as to ensure that our city is functional and is serving our community effectively and efficiently. When we hire new employees, or even when we promote employees, I usually meet them in small groups and talk to them and get to know them. I had to meet a group actually this morning, and always I remind them about our mission, and I remind them of our values. And one of them is our employees are here to serve the public. We are public servants is one of the 7 tenets I always share with them. I share with our employees that we are here because we have residents who pay our salaries. They are the ones who pay our salaries. They are the ones who pay our pensions, hopefully one day. And in return, they have every right that we are responsive to their needs, their requests, and their contact with us. We are public servants. And you will always find us responsive to your needs and to your concerns. And while we are public servants, my expectation is also that our employees receive decency and respect when we jointly help to address the problems and solve the issues brought forward. Our employees are proud to be part of the Monterey community, just like I am sure you are all too. You are too, sorry. So questions regarding the state of the city of Monterey will always involve how are the city's finances doing. Over the past 12 months, the city of Monterey's economic recovery has continued to make progress. In 2018, I spoke about the need to reform our municipal operations, including our financials. With the help and support of several different councils and our dedicated and professional staff, we were actually able to reform and reshape our city operations in all major areas. Our city's fiscal health response plan, launched in 2018-2019, emphasized the need for the city of Monterey to implement strategies to balance the city's checkbook and solve long-term funding needs. We've made considerable progress over the years. The work isn't over, And we must continue down a road of fiscal sustainability, which is one of the city's council's core value driver. We will need to continue analyzing our service levels and adjust them where appropriate. We will continue to look at our internal processes to streamline and optimize. We will continue to adjust our workforce, compensation and benefit structure, as well as pension obligations. Lastly, we will look at our revenues. Based on various successful factors, specifically the above-mentioned implementation of our philosophies from the Fiscal Health Response Plan, last year in June 2023, the City Council approved several new fiscal reserve policies with associated recommended annual funding levels. That is really good news for all of us living in Monterey. Our single largest reserve fund is the Fund for Economic Uncertainty, and it is funded for the first time in the history of our city at 20% of the overall general fund revenues. The establishment of a pension reserve policy will create a midterm to long-term fiscal security plan that is helping address our unfunded pension liability of $180 million as of June 30th, 2023. Other reserve policies adopted by the City Council include the Conference Center Reserve Policy, Sports Center Facilities Reserve Policy, Technology Infrastructure Reserve Policy, Sea Level Rise Reserve Policy, City Facilities Reserve Policy, Library Facility and Maintenance Reserve Policy, Public Safety and Maintenance Reserve Policy, and Parking Garage Facility Reserve. The City Council established these reserve policies and allocated funding to these reserve accounts for the first time. But remember, these policies also call for annual allocation of funds to these accounts, which only fund right now a fraction of our city needs. Let me just repeat it because it's a monumental achievement of this council. For the first time in the city's history, we have now started to systematically allocate funding for future major capital replacement needs. We could not have created those reserves without the help and support of Monterey voters. Several tax measures helped us to achieve some of our goals. Right now, we are prepared for a normal fiscal crisis, be it a recession, another dot-com bust, or another financial crisis. While we are better prepared for another pandemic, our financial resilience is still not limitless. And when our main revenue source from the hospitality industry potentially dries up. Traditionally, we have done an incredible job of prioritizing service delivery, historically keeping the fire stations open and operated, police officers hired, staff hired, community centers open, sports center open over the years. And we have ensured that programs like NCIP continue, and we have also built new projects. While we all love building new projects because they are exciting and they bring fresh amenities and services to our community, we have not invested nearly enough in our current facilities, and today we are all paying the price. Roof leaks, overflowing sewer pipes, peeling paint, defunct generators, etc. at core facilities like fire stations and community centers are happening. Our approach over the years has been using Band-Aids. If you own a house, it's like building a new deck, a new garden, maybe a new patio, but not fixing the core issues with your house because you literally are using buckets to collect rainwater from roof leaks, the toilets back up, and the paint is falling off. So currently, our staff is in the process of conducting a facility needs assessment. We are evaluating all our city buildings to identify current and future investment needs. We will be soon sharing the final results with the council and the public once that is completed. While we have put a lot of seed money into some of our reserve accounts, now what we need to do is address our 5-year plus needs in operations and maintenance. And the facility assessment report and estimates will provide us with important data points. Here's the other news about our reserves. Our reserve policies will help us when we are hit with the next large recession or when we need to reinvest into our sports center, conference center, community center, city hall, or replace parking garages. It is common sense for us to set the money aside for major replacement of those assets. We have stopped kicking the can down the road. We have stopped burdening the next generation of taxpayers and city leaders with a task to find the funds to make future expenses happen. That's the purpose of our reserve policies. And as we all know, we are all as prudent as our elected officials allow us to be. Reserves can be raided, and they can be used for other community priorities. No policy can protect them from that. Could a future black swan event like the COVID pandemic wipe out our reserves? Is that a probability? The answer is yes. That can still happen, but we are way better prepared. So what do we need as immediate to long-term funding needs? We need to fix 2 fire stations at Hawthorne and at Montecito, both built in 1951. Just imagine what our residents did in 1951. They built 2 fire stations in the same year. What an accomplishment in those days. When I say that they were built in 1951, just consider what they did in 1951. That's a great accomplishment. But we need to fix those fire stations on Hawthorne and Montecito. We need to fix the Hilltop Park Center. That was a school purchased from the Monterey Peninsula Unified School District in 1985. There have been no meaningful investments into that building. We need to rehabilitate our El Estero Park Center, built in 1954. We need to fix the restrooms for our employees here at City Hall. They have the charm of a train station in Stalingrad in the 1950s. What do we need as intermediate funding? We need to build a new library, or we need to finance a complete overhaul of the existing building, 20 to 50 million. We need to replace the existing police and fire station built in 1959, 150 million. We need to build an additional fire station in the Highway 68 corridor to service Fisherman's Flat, Deer Flats, Rhine Ranch. That's a good number that I have as well, is $10 million. That's what the fire station costs right now that the airport built. We need to rehabilitate the tunnel built in 1968. The Marina Wall is built for 25 years. It was built in 1997, estimate $25 million. So I can give you some more good ideas about what we have to do. And you can ask yourself, or you can ask me the question, why haven't you done anything? Why haven't you put any money aside? That's a great question. I cannot really answer what previous city managers and previous city councils were thinking, but in the end, we have started now addressing those topics and putting money aside for that. But here's another answer that I want to share with you. We don't have a revenue problem in the city of Monterey. We have a spending problem. We are spending too much on too many assets. There's nothing wrong with that as long as we can create additional funding and maintain those assets and invest in those assets. But probably that's part of our issue. Our revenues are great, but our spending is a lot better than great. In retrospect, over the past 20, 30, 40 years, we were really great in creating high quality services for our residents. Think about our community centers, think about the sports center, think about the library, think about police, fire, and police and public works services. But we have failed so far to really prioritize where our money is going. Our largest spending program is the NCIP. The Neighborhood and Community Improvement Program is a great program. Per city charter, 16% of the hotel tax are allocated to this program. In 2024, more than $6 million. We are extremely grateful that the NCIP reinvests millions of those dollars into our parks, beaches, playgrounds, green belts, and streets, our city would not be functional in the way it does without the council approving NCIP projects proposed by our neighbors. Neighbors know what they want to see in front of their homes. They also know what enhancement the city team needs to provide better services. Many projects helped our library, our sports center, our community centers. Very often, the NCIP proposed and paid Band-Aids for our cherished assets were helping. What is missing, though, are larger scale funded projects. We must realize that the NCIP also in many cases adds costly new assets into the mix, which are really nice to have, but nice to have does not really mean must have, correct? That also makes sense as long as we can afford the ongoing maintenance, or more importantly, we have sufficient other funding in place to maintain our already operational assets. Please allow me to share with you an example. 8 pickleball fields are on an NCIP launch pad. Does Monterey really need 8 pickleball fields located out at Highway 68, Ryan Ranch? This is a location that will become a regional draw for pickleball players, paid for and maintained by Monterey taxpayers. Do we want pickleball players get in their cars, drive to a remote location to play pickleball, burning CHG, gasoline, and rubber? Do we need to spend funds on something new while we forego the opportunity to invest into existing community assets? So should city funds be used to build a regional pickleball facility and possibly maintain it when our police officers regularly experience sewage backups in their 50-year-old buildings, when our firefighters live and work in buildings with peeling paint, and when we are using plastic buckets to collect water from leaky roofs in our community centers? The answer may be yes, for those who want to play pickleball, and no, for those who understand that you do not build a brand new porch when your roof is leaking. Taking the same pickleball example, our residents need to weigh in and letting the council know what they think is a priority for them. Fire station maintenance and upgrades, or something new and shiny. And if we finance the new, nice and shiny, wouldn't residents believe we can also invest into the other assets given us granted by, like, fire stations, police stations, library, and sports center? Stated differently, if the city can afford to finance a mural on an asset not even owned by the city in the amount of $550,000, why can't the city fix Hilltop Park or Montecito Fire Station? I believe these are fair questions, and our residents should discuss those questions around the kitchen table. As city manager, I tell you that we could better use the engineering resources and the cost for the pickleball project in repairs or rehabilitation of our library, fire stations, community centers. And I can tell you also that I just ruffled a lot of feathers. However, these questions need to be asked for the good of our city and in the interest of those who will come after us. As I stated earlier, we have a spending problem, not a revenue problem. Our income revenues are great and the envy of many cities. By choice, we spend funds on a sports center, which costs us more money than we collect in fees. We spend funds on a library that serves 52% of Monterey non-Monterey residents. And our customers, of course, want to open the library once again 7 days a week, while the heating system in the library has been on life support. We own 5 community centers and operate 4 of those. 5 community centers in a city of 30,000. When you look at the benchmark by the National Parks and Recreation Association, it shows that a city of our size the median number of residents per community center was 26,696. The city of Monterey's ratio is 5,974 residents for each community center, all of them serving their purpose and all of them in dire need to upgrades replacement. The totalities of the community centers and their operations and maintenance needs are more a liability than an asset. Undergrounding. Some residents are asking for undergrounding the power lines. The reasons for that can be found in fire, safety concerns, and downtime from power outages. There are so many worthy projects in the community, but I always say the community has choices and we cannot fund everything. So this is about establishing clear priorities, because as lucky as we are to have a healthy budget to compared to other communities in California, we cannot fund everything. So what should be your takeaways? First, we have done a great job recovering from the pandemic. For the first time, we have reserve policies in place which allow future leaders to draw from. Second, we have been working on cost containment, including the creation of funding streams for our infrastructure asset. Measure P and S literally paved the way to show our community how to improve our street network, storm drains, and sidewalks. And third, we are highlighting the challenges and the choices to you, all with the hope to understand that we have to continue to make it through our city with tough future choices. I'll leave you with one more statistic. The city of Monterey allocates annually about 2% of the general fund revenues toward reinvestments in city infrastructure. In our current fiscal year, that means $2 million of $97 million general fund. Next door, in Pacific Grove, 18% of their budget goes towards capital improvement. If you look at Salinas, 17% of their annual budget goes towards capital improvement. We will do better, and staff will propose within the next budget cycle a significant increase for CIP funding. We can do it if we all jointly look at the existing paradigms and if we all have the courage to discuss changes and implement them based on the input of all residents. I believe the time is now to have those discussions. We also need to start to discuss now how we plan on replacing Measure P and S when they expire in 2027 or Measure G in 2029. We should also revisit Measure Y, the hotel tax measure, and discuss a new strategy how to invest the additional NCIP funds generated by Measure Y into community-wide projects. I hope everyone understands that I not ask for an increase of TOT, especially to those representatives from the hospitality industry. Okay, I want to share with you a few other items. The city continues to hire full-time staff. Currently, we have more than 50 full-time vacancies. That's actually a great, significant reduction from 2023, when we carried about 55 to 68 full-time vacancies throughout the year. Our entire staff deserves recognition for all they do to keep the city operational. I'm also proud to report that we have filled all or almost all of our employee ranks within our parks and street division. When I say almost, I'm pretty sure we have hired all, but since things always change, I gave myself an almost. Our workforce is promoted from within, as well as staff from employees coming to us from other agencies and our other employers. Our diversity among our employees is increasing, and we are working hard to ensure that everyone in our organization who they are working for. Equally hard, because of a shrinking labor pool and the high cost of living on the peninsula, we are working to retain our employees for our organization. We want our employees to know that they belong to the best city organization of the country. In my introduction, I spoke about being public servants. There's one more connotation of that. When we serve the public promptly, fair, and just, we will have happy residents. And in return, happy residents mean happy employees. In the next few months, the City Council will negotiate new labor contracts with all bargaining groups. We will need to recognize that our employees as well have to pay increasing rents, increasing costs in groceries and car and home insurances. Our labor contracts need to be reflective of that as well as show an understanding of the labor market we are in. I want to thank our entire city team for all they do for our city. They all care about you, your quality of life, and your well-being. Thank you to all of our employees working 24/7 and 365 days to keep Monterey the best-run city in our Tri-County area. In 2022, staff proposed and council approved a more organized and coordinated approach towards getting other people's money. I'm speaking about grants issued by the state and the federal government. In 2023, we hired a professional grant consulting company to help identify, apply for grants, and manage grant efforts across the city organization. So far, the city has received $5.66 million in grants focused on the city's funding priorities, including housing, transportation, emergency management, and recreation. We have applied for larger grants, and we are hopeful to continue sharing success stories with the community and our city council soon. We also track and manage funds from the city's share of the nationwide opioid litigation settlement of $26 billion reached with the three largest pharmaceutical distributors and the parent corporation that manufactured and marketed opioids. The city receives and tracks approximately $35,900 per year, a total of roughly $647,000 over 18 years, which the city can use to combat substance abuse and related issues. And we are using the money also to help the unhoused. And in our effort to address the unhoused, we hired a full-time position called Homeless Navigator. Here are some success stories collected over the past 4 months from this position. This is a long list, so bear with me, but it's important to know how successful we are on this sector as well. We established a connection to shelter managers to assist with the referral of individuals. We attended meetings for outreach, point and time count, coordination of services and emergency shelters, strengthened connections with various agencies, identified new upcoming programs and built connections with them, gained more information of services available to individuals in the community and criteria for referral, outreach at encampments and other agencies to establish contacts with individuals to assist with resources, contacted over 40 people to provide services and offer information on resources. 15 individuals were offered information of resources and declined wanting assistance. 4 were uncertain at the time and contact information was provided. 21 people accepted assistance with being connected to shelters, housing, receiving vital documents and basic needs. 21 people in 4 months. That sounds very small for some. It's a huge number. Contacted current social worker to confirm 2 individuals were established into resources, coordinated with the rehabilitation programs, overdose response team and county jail in order to assist 2 individuals into that program. Assisted 4 individuals with motel stays during inclement weather. 13 individuals provided ongoing follow-up and connection for services and referral. Assisted 2 individuals into a program for mental health and housing services. Assisted 5 individuals into a program for enhanced care management and housing navigation. 1 individual with resources for gas, vouchers, and other supportive needs assisted that is currently in the process of working on obtaining housing. 2 individuals with connection to services assisted, and they were able to return home to the families instead of staying on the streets, assisted 2 individuals into rehabilitation program, and 1 is currently waiting on a bed, and assisted 1 individual with the program. They met criteria for in order to obtain safe housing due to physical health conditions. So that's has been done since we hired the navigational homeless navigator in, I want to say, mid-November last year. What are other major work programs staff is focused on? As the mayor pointed out, housing programs are consuming major staffing resources in our planning, housing, and city attorney's office. We are on track to tackle all the issues. It is important for the public and for the council to understand that prioritizing of various great ideas and suggestions is important. Right now, our team here is focused on bringing home the general update for the additional 3,654 housing units the mayor spoke about that. We are also working on the final list of potential cannabis operators, and we are working on a rental assistance program. Those priorities are worked on in addition to the normal activities occupying staff. Another large-scale program and current initiative is the potential implementation to implement automatic license plate readers. Our team, led by our capable and trusted Police Chief Silver Fox David Hober, is currently going through I just was checking if you're awake. Our team, led by our Police Chief Hober, is currently going through an organized public outreach process which will help us to implement this program. ALPRs have proven to identify criminals time and time again. There are aspects with respect to privacy, data security concerns, and through our discussions that we have with interest groups and residents, I'm confident that we will be able to provide a solution accepted by the community and by our council. I want to close my remarks now by thanking our city council for their hard work and dedication. All 5 council members want the best for our city. All of them work hard to find solutions for our city and our challenges. Many of today's challenges, as I pointed out, did not arrive overnight and will not be solved overnight. I ask you all, like the mayor, to come to council meetings and watch them work. Tell them what you think, allow them to provide you with their solution. Thank you to council members Barber, Garcia, Hoffer, and Smith, and also thank you to you, Mayor Williamson. You all deserve our respect and our gratefulness. And lastly, I want to thank you, the residents, the businesses, and the many groups representing a diverse set of interests. You are all part of the success. Without your love and your passion for Monterey, we would not be able to exist. Thank you very much.
For which one of us? For me. Is there a way that we could get folks on a mic to? What, if you have a question, why don't you go up and use this right here?
So that way folks online can hear you.
It's serious. I could repeat, but it's so much better if it's spoken directly from.
The speaker, but I'm here, blue collar.
You mentioned the water that we might get additionally for the development of low-income housing, et cetera, and you had a number of, pardon me, what was it?
2,250 acre feet.
So how much water does that provide? How many homes would that provide? Is my first question. And how would Monterey fund all this?
The housing?
Yes.
So the idea for the actual construction of housing is to support private developers coming in and doing that themselves. There are opportunities that the city is taking and can continue to take in order to help promote some development on our own property, like we're doing right here behind City Hall.
Sure.
But we released an RFP for that. And have gone into an exclusive negotiating agreement with a private developer, with a nonprofit developer to construct that. So I don't imagine that there's going to be much funding coming from the city of Monterey,
So it'd be
unless there's a huge affordable housing component to it, and we can help with maybe some pre-construction costs associated with it, like we're doing with this project here.
Mhm.
In regards to the water, I'm not the best at the numbers, and I don't know if Hans, you could speak to that better.
So I did some quick math because I can do math too.
Nice.
Uh,
Yeah.
So 2,250 acre feet of water is for the region, is for the water district. We use right now a number of 0.12 per household. So if you divide 2250 by 0.12 acre feet, you get to 18,750 housing units. Now, that's not just for Monterey, that's for the whole area here that is being supplied. And some of the water will also go to economic development, because if people come and move here, they need grocery stores, they need
Sure.
other places, barber shops, etc., to get service.
Okay, very good. Yeah, that's pretty substantial. Yeah. I was just curious because I was thinking along the lines of there's a lot of guys waiting right now, contractors, developers for water. And they've been waiting so long. I was wondering if that would just evaporate pretty much right at the onset, but that sounds like, it's quite a bit of water to provide everybody.
I feel optimistic. We're going to be lobbying hard with the Water Management District to give us a representational amount of water supply, knowing that we have such a huge number on the peninsula. I think we have the largest number. Reina is the housing unit requirement on the peninsula. So so I think we should get a higher proportion of that water supply. And that's not only for large scale projects. That could also be one of my hopes when we get to this discussion on the council, is that we take a bucket of that water and make it available for private homeowners that want to add ADUs to their property. That's increasing housing stock in the community. So we need to look at all avenues to be able to help support that.
Very good. As long as I'm here, I do have one question, if I can
You're done.
run through you. Sorry. You had mentioned, I guess, that there's a $180 million on the pension deficit.
Yeah.
So hearing that, that's a big number, of course.
Yes.
I'm wondering if there's ever been like some kind of discussions within council and charts made to devise a way to say, for example, hey, what if we cut out all this overtime or something? Or what if we did this? Is that going to start to fund things and right the ship, rather than, that's what I always just seem to hear in headlines is, this guy's got an extra, 200,000 in overtime, one person that works for the sheriff's department, for example.
Yeah.
And those kind of instances where, it just makes me think as a taxpayer too, who's watching all this?
Yeah.
And what could we do to tighten all this up? Because then we could take that money to fund other things and fix the fire stations or build the fire stations. But it's hard to see any of this happening when you run across those instances of just kind of, those kind of payments going out.
So do I need to answer from?
Yeah, you can come on.
So, thank you for that question. In 2012, State of California changed the way they are collecting funds from for the California Public Employment Retirement System. So these so-called PEPRA employees are different than the classic employees. It is the predictions, the forecasting models basically look at the time when the classic employees are dying out, literally, and the PEPRA employees are then going into pension. The PEPRA employees are fully funded in the current pension system. So every employee that started in 2012 and later is paying for their proportionate share of pensions. The employer pays a much smaller portion of the pension. And for the Monterey models, we are expecting by 2035 to 2036 a very smoothing out of our cost annually, and actually a reduction in annual contributions to the CalPERS system. The $180 million number is a number you should not be too excited about. It sounds very scary,
Mhm.
but it's a number that changes from year to year as the stock market changes.
Sure.
And it can be at the end of June 30th this year with Biden economics and making great success, and the stock market is booming right now.
Mhm.
It can drop to 130 million in a heartbeat as well.
Mhm.
So the council gets usually an update once a year about our actuarials, what we have to pay, and always the same questions come up. Shall we pay if we win the lottery? Shall we all pay it off? And the answer is no. Because today you pay off 180 and tomorrow it's 120 and you overpaid by 60 million. So that kind of is not downplaying the severity of the pension challenge, but what it tells you is that it's more fluid than
Whittle.
static.
Whittle at it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Thank you. And that's it for
And,
questions.
and well, no. It's not a dialogue.
Maybe someone else.
Okay.
Give someone else a chance.
Yeah.
We're happy for questions. Sir.
I'm always interested in the question of affordable housing because I also have kids that probably could not move to Monterey. I'm curious, I've seen affordable housing go up sometimes in the past, and in 10 years, it's no longer affordable housing. It's, it's speculative and so forth. And so my question is, what mechanisms does the city need to put in place, or are you thinking about, to make sure that the affordable housing we build today is affordable in 10 years?
Yes, so whatever is declared as affordable housing has a deed restriction on it and has to stay affordable in perpetuity.
In perpetuity.
So right now, the city of Monterey, every new project that is being built has to have, by definition, 20% affordable housing component. Now, the renters advocates will share with you that the affordability that is defined by federal standards is already way too high. It has to be lowered. More people should get into affordable housing or low income housing than what they actually make in salaries. So, but the good news is those homes that are designated as affordable housing have to stay in the affordable housing stock.
Could I just add a little bit? to
Yeah.
that?
Please.
So that there's different definitions of affordable housing. There's affordable by design, right? Making housing affordable by how much is invested into the development of a project. But there's also the government definition of what affordable means. And what they do is they look at the area median income, and the AMI that we use in the city of Monterey is the AMI that's used for the entire county. So when Hans speaks to this idea that the threshold to qualify is actually pretty low, you have to be making very little money in the city of Monterey to be able to afford it, when the cost of living in the city of Monterey, based off of our neighboring jurisdictions, is a lot higher. So you have to make a lot lower of an income in order to qualify. And there's this kind of almost donut hole effect, where you have people that can afford to live here and you have people that qualify affordable housing, but then we have what we also call the missing middle of people that can't qualify for affordable housing, but find it challenging to afford the cost of living. So I think there's a whole conversation to have there as well. But the idea of the units that we identify through our housing element, that 3,654 unit number, that is broken down based off of market rate housing and then different lower affordability income levels. And so those lower affordability income levels, those units that are developed from that, are put into the housing stock in perpetuity in the city of Monterey.
Can I give a hypothetical real quick? Suppose you're a young teacher who's been recruited to teach in Monterey and you're working on a teacher's salary.
Mhm.
Are they in the hole, or is that's still a challenge?
So when I was looking at this a few years ago, and this is a conversation that PK Diffenbaugh, who's the superintendent of MPUSD, speaks to a lot. When teachers start their careers here, they can't afford the cost of living. Oftentimes they can't afford, especially if they have family members, they can't afford or qualify for affordable housing. So they fall into that kind of missing middle piece. And the challenge for the school district is that they are investing a lot of money to get these folks to start their careers here and get them going, whatever training that it is that they need, getting all of their requirements needed to be an educator. And then they realize soon after how expensive it is to live here and they moved somewhere else. So our school district is losing money on just investing in teachers for them to move away. So that's a perfect example. We also have folks here on our city staff that find it incredibly hard to afford the cost of living here. A lot of our city staff live outside of the city of Monterey. We need to make sure that we provide opportunities for folks to be able to stay here in the city. And when Hans was speaking earlier about the greenhouse gas emissions on a different subject, but the topic still applies. We have a role to play in helping to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and providing a better environment. So,
Okay, thank you. And by the way, we just built 8 pickleball courts at NPC, so,
there you go. It's a win-win.
We shall send them your way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice
Anybody
to
else?
meet you.
I'm very short. So I wanted to make a comment and then ask a question. First of all, I didn't realize that the city staff is only at 50%. And that's
No.
because,
No, there's about 50 vacant positions.
oh, okay, I got it. But even still, it doesn't see, at least we as residents, I don't think really notice it as much because you guys are doing such a good job at staying, on top of things and being responsive, as far as I can tell. So kudos to you for that. And I'm just curious, how you guys are trying to find people to fill those positions and we know that the cost of living and all of that is difficult. But I also want to say thanks to the mayor for admitting this fiscal problem that has obviously been in place for many decades. If we are that much in the hole because, only $2 million of the general fund were set aside for infrastructure, that doesn't even barely cover one project that we need done amongst the many that we do. So I'm hoping that, we're not going to be able to catch up that much, but at least I want to acknowledge the fact that, somebody did do something about it. So thank you to the council and the mayor's leadership on that. But yeah, mainly I'm curious about the staffing.
Yeah, only if she sits down.
You don't want any more questions from me?
Yeah, so as you know, we are also a reflection of what is happening in our overall economy. A lot of folks have initially not returned to the economy and have stayed home. We have several other challenges, which are high cost of living here in Monterey. When many times when we have offered employment opportunities to folks outside of the area, they sometimes reject the offer because they cannot find the housing that they are used to live in where they come from at a price that they can afford. We are doing better now, and we have also not lowered our standards. So we are still picky in who we would like to bring into the city employment. The council, I believe, in December was willing to listen to us with respect to all our engineering positions. I spoke a lot about capital improvement projects. The fact is that we have about 50% of our engineering positions not filled, 50%. And so in December, we went forward as staff to the city council and said, we need to pay top salaries in the Tri-County area. Every engineer that works in the city of Monterey and will start in Monterey will, or is still working in Monterey because we want to keep them here as well, is get paid top dollars in the Tri-County area now. So we artificially inflated that. Of course, other cities will now try to do the same. We also provided them with a retention bonus of $12,000. If you stay in the city of Monterey every year, every quarter, we'll give you $3,000 for just being here as an engineer. So it's just for the engineers. And why are we doing that? Because we have a lot of NCIP program projects. We have a lot of Measure P and S projects. And you, the residents, will not understand if we don't invest those dollars into our roads and storm drains, ADA improvements, etc. So we need to have engineers. Next week, Tuesday, the council will have, I believe it's still on for next week, Tuesday, 5 engineering contracts with private engineering companies as well. But they also are suffering under not enough engineers to recruit. We have done the same with police officers, where we pay a very competitive salary for police officers. And coming to the council also sooner or later will be a salary survey that we right now just have received in draft, that basically looks at all our salaries and tries to find out where are the sweet spots that we have to position our salaries to backfill all those positions. Because every position that is not filled has provided services to residents and is missed somehow, somewhere.
How's police and fire staffing?
Fire is always good. Police is, we always carry a larger amount of vacated police officers there. That is a different set of reasons. Some police officers do not pass the very stringent selection process and then the very stringent process when they are deployed in the field with the field training officers. They get, for instance, evaluated weekly, and some officers then either leave voluntarily or we have to let them go. We have police officers in the academy that may not pass the academy sometimes for certain reasons. We carry probably on average anywhere between 4 to 8 police officer vacancies.
And that's retirements also.
And then, of course, we have retirements and all that, yes.
Well, the only other thing I want to say is thanks to all of you for the outreach that you're doing. I don't think that there's ever been so much outreach being done, whether it's on the renter assistance program, the rental registry, with the fiscal. I know on Have Your Say Monterey, there are 2 fiscal related surveys, and I think it's really important for, you know, residents to participate. And I don't think that the participation is as high as it should be.
Yes, and Lori Huelga, she's our public information officer. She asked me to share with all of you that it will be your task to fill out the surveys and recruit another person to fill out the survey. So that's your take home exam. No, what do you call it in the school?
Take home exam.
That's your take home work. We have 2 professors from the MPC here in the audience right now, so I gotta be careful what I say.
Hello. Well, I want to echo this young lady's sentiment about, you know, congratulating the current council and the mayor for having the foresight to create various reserve funds. Clearly, there's a long list of projects. Couple of things. So for housing, is the city doing anything to reduce the amount of burden it is, not just on developers, but homeowners like me that are building an ADU? As some of you are aware, I own a local business. We reside in the area, but not in Monterey. But we own a business on Alvarado Street. Just judging from what it took to get a permit for remodeling a really old building, which I promise I will never do again. for various reasons, not permits, just secrets of all buildings. Is the city going to be doing anything like reducing the amount of fees to, just the paperwork, the time it takes?
So I'm personally a big fan of removing red tape.
Right.
And I think historically what's happened in the city of Monterey is in order for folks to feel like we need to keep the town looking a certain way, they've created a lot of policies
Right.
and restricting property owners in regards to what they can do. And in so doing, it's created a great burden on city staff to make sure that we're checking all the boxes to make sure everything is fulfilled appropriately and correctly. I think that there's tons of opportunity to look at removing some of those policies that are overburdensome. And what I would encourage, and I might get some grimacing from staff, but what I would encourage is if you are working on a project and the city is telling you, well, the policy doesn't allow it, if we can come to an agreement that this is a reasonable project that you're trying to do, and all we have to do is maybe look at doing some updates to our policies, then I would bring that on and let's allow that streamlining, because you being successful in adding additional unit in the city or getting your business up and running more effectively will provide revenue, will provide more citizens to be able to support multiple goals that we have to achieve. So it's not necessarily an easy solution, and it might actually put more work on the front runner in trying to help create that change. But the idea is for all of us to work together to try to come up with some solutions here. And I think that this council is particularly eager around being innovative and creative on finding new approaches to solving some of these problems.
Excellent. Another thing, at a recent council meeting, the city manager and the police chief were encouraging the council to put a 180-day hold on the retail marijuana business, right? I was just wondering, how come the council didn't side with them? And is the city going to issue any policy for how, certain situations are handled? Are you adding any new police officers, for example? I mean, even today, there are various individuals that believe marijuana is legal. I can smoke it whatever I want. No, you can smoke it in the privacy of your own home or a designated area. But being on Alvarado, I see it all the time. I saw it today before I came here. Somebody just smoking a joint on the sidewalk, walking by. They try to come into our business. I do tell them, hey, we cannot serve you because you're under the influence. Now, are there any plans to add new police positions to handle whatever comes our way? Or what's the approach?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So first, what I would say is, just like you gave the example of somebody being under the influence of alcohol, you don't see the city jumping to create a policy of preventing liquor stores in the city of Monterey.
Right.
So, I think that looking at the bad actors and making an assumption about an entire community of users, I think is the wrong approach. Though I do recognize that we need to make sure we're doing whatever we can to address the abusers of and make sure that we're addressing that appropriately, just like our police would respond to an alcoholic in the middle of the street on Alvarado Street and potentially causing an accident. So I feel confident that the city will respond appropriately to either type of situation. And I imagine that if there's a greater need to shift resources from the police chief, that he'll present that to the council. But at this point, there's been no reallocation. So that's there. We don't know what that will look like in the city of Monterey. So it's really based off of assumptions and what we're seeing elsewhere. But I think that we can feel confident that the city staff will take care of any type of incident that comes up.
Absolutely. And if I could make a suggestion, if we could just have some signs out saying, you cannot smoke marijuana in public. something that simple, right? Could sort of address an unforeseen situation. Just my perspective.
Yeah, I'm kind of laughing and I want to give an example because there's something that we've discussed in closed session and so I have to be careful not to say anything, but it's like you can't put a sign up for every, bad behavior
Agreed.
that exists within society. And so in as much as we try to get the word out, I think what we can do is make sure that we're working with our cannabis retail establishments that if they notice, just like a liquor establishment, if you notice somebody coming in under the influence, maybe we think twice about offering them services. So I think that we can create a standard and expectation of what we have here in the city of Monterey to make sure that we're elevating ourselves. But I just want to be careful that we're not, having every light pole down, Alvarado Street saying, don't drink and drive, don't smoke pot. I want to be careful. I'm open to suggestions, and I think it's an ongoing dialogue that we should have.
Absolutely.
Yep. Thank you, Mitch.
Hi. So I'm Jeff Morgan with Chispa. Mayor, I've really appreciated being able to work with the city. We've tried to do some work together already. We have our El Estero community of seniors that's been here for probably 40 years at this point. So thank you for that. So first of all, congratulations with the budgets being what they are, that you're getting some affordable housing done and showing some real commitment to that. I've done a look at what's happened as the impact of the state budget and the fact that we've had to cut $1.2 billion, or that the governor is proposing that in the current housing budget. And even in Monterey County, what we're seeing right now between Monterey, San Benito, and Santa Cruz, on average, it's something like 200 units get awarded of what they call straight deed restricted affordable housing at about 60% of area median income or less. That's not a lot for this region. It's only a fraction of it. And I guess my question to you is this. I just moved in some families into our community that's over by the former Fort Ord. They had come out of some pretty tough situations, 66 family households, and there are 1,800 applications. And two of the folks that I moved in, they were living in a garage and a shed, and they essentially had families of 7 and 8. And they were really at risk of homelessness. So the need is absolutely there just generally within our region. And it seems like here on the peninsula, there are a lot of resources that are they have a sort of almost a national sort of scope of wealth. If you think about the fact that the military is growing a presence that's needed for national defense, that we're right next door to Pebble Beach where the Pro-Am is. I think AT&T had put in $250 million to help support that charitable event. And we got some funds from that, about $50,000 for some services for our residents. And then you have Montage, which is really looking for healthcare and trying to house their folks, and educational resources that have. What sort of things do you think you can do if there aren't enough resources for traditional affordable housing? Is the city looking at some more non-traditional partnerships, some ideas of looking at Ohana and what they're doing to help with the kids in this region and those sorts of things?
Yeah. So I definitely don't have all the solutions, and I think that was part of my speech earlier, is making sure that we do open up the aperture of listening to feedback from more folks, because that's the way that we're going to be able to pull these non-traditional ways of approaching things. I will share that I think that when I was running for city council in 2018, I was noticing I was at a lot of events with other elected people running for elected office that were also focusing on a message of housing. They were a group of particularly younger elected officials, and we decided to form a coalition. We call it the Monterey Peninsula Housing Coalition. And early on in that process, we had a retreat, and we spent several hours on coming up with objectives around how we can look at housing from a more regional perspective. And I think part of the problem in our region is you have, particularly on the peninsula, on the coastal side of Monterey, you have 7 cities from Marina down to Carmel by the Sea. None of them have a population of over 35,000. And we're all working in our own silos. So how do we work together? We know that the majority of the workforce is here in the city of Monterey, but our workforce mainly lives in places like Seaside, Marina, Salinas. And so we just wanted to create this space to have a larger conversation. One of the objectives that came up that's always kind of stayed in my belly was the idea of creating some kind of joint powers authority, some kind of regional body that's focused specifically on housing. And I think that where there might be an opportunity to not only leverage public dollars, but also local dollars, private investment, is creating this group. And that would start by tapping into the local housing trust fund. So the state of California is willing to match, I think it's up to $5 million for counties to form local housing trust fund. We're in an unfortunate situation right now because the population requirement that's needed to be included in order to qualify for the local housing trust fund requires us to have the city of Salinas involved in it. And the city of Salinas has decided to go in on their own. And so I've had some initial conversations with council members from Salinas on the idea of opening up that aperture and us working together on looking at housing from a more regional perspective. But I think would be a great way of just getting that conversation going around regional collaboration. I know that the idea of regionalism scares people sometimes. The example that I've been given when I've had this conversations with folks is FORA and just how much anxiety that gives them. But I think the fact of the matter is that housing is a regional solution. And if we don't look at it from a regional perspective, we're failing ourselves. And so my hope is that we can maybe invest some of our own funds in there. We get some matching funds from the state, federal government. And then I think that by putting some of our own stake in the game and proving to be successful, I know that the business community would be willing to invest in this as well, particularly the hospitality industry. But the challenge that they have is that all their businesses individually are so small, right? And it's just like this larger problem that I just described with our jurisdictions. So if we all can work together and create a pot of funding that's supported by public dollars, but also by private contributions, I think that can provide a lot of funding for us to figure out what affordable housing looks like for us and not be restricted to some government definition.
Great. Well, thank you. Well, I think it's time for us to help again. So looking forward to working with you.
I appreciate your work and congratulations on getting into the role and continuing that work.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, one more question. Or none. We could just leave early. 8:30 is the stop dead time. The lights are going to turned off. So if you want to not go home, that's fine. I won't finish that line, but any last minute questions? All right. Thank you all so much for being here. Did we get any online? No. Okay. All right. Have a good night, everybody.